Will you guys close your eyes for just a second? And I want to read a verse over you this morning and just really listen to what the words of this verse are. It says, "And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose." You can open your eyes. I want you to read that just in your mind. Just look at that scripture. And we know that for those that love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. God can take what the enemy meant for evil, and he can turn it for good. As we study the life of Joseph, we are going to see this truth come alive. The story of Joseph's life is such a huge story that it's going to take us 8 weeks to study through this story. Just to give you some perspective, creation, the creation in the Bible is Genesis 1 and 2, okay, 2 chapters. But this story, the story of Joseph, is from Genesis 37 through 50. This is a massive story with a million details. And so it literally takes up 1/4 of the book of Genesis. From the age of 17 through the age of 30, Joseph, we are going to see him endure 13 years of just affliction, just hardship, many twists and turns. But then what we are going to see is Joseph become the second most powerful man in Egypt at that time. We're going to see Joseph be rejected. We're going to see him have false accusations brought against him. And we will even see Joseph be completely forgotten about. You might expect to hear that, Joseph complaining a little bit or whining a little bit or, maybe just giving up. But instead of hearing those things, you're going to hear really just the opposite, which is we see Joseph become fruitful during his affliction. So this morning, I would encourage you guys to turn to Genesis 37, and it will be on the screen, and you can follow along, or you can look at your own Bible or your smartphone app with the Bible, whatever you want. But I will tell you, if you have a physical paper Bible, I would encourage you to bring it, and we are going to be kind of going through these chapters in this story over the next 8 weeks. And so if you have a physical Bible, it's a great time when we're studying straight through something like this where you can make some notes, underline some stuff. And so follow along with me this morning. Let's start in Genesis 37, verse 1. It says, "Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Silpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel," that says Israel, but his name is Jacob, okay? So Israel, or Jacob, which is Joseph's dad, loved Joseph more than any of its other sons, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, there were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf," just bundles of wheat pretty much, "my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow down ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, and his father kept the saying in mind. Family problems, right? Family problems. Favoritism and jealousy. Right off the bat, we see that these are byproducts of not so great parenting by Jacob and a very, immature 17-year-old Joseph. So God had blessed Jacob with a son in his old age, and God had given Joseph a special gift to be able to have these dreams and understand what they meant and interpret them. And it seems like Jacob and his son Joseph, neither one of them are doing very good at handling these blessings, right? I don't know about you, but I can think of a time. Can you think of a time when maybe you were blessed, but you didn't handle it very well? Have you ever had one of those moments where, like, maybe it was a relationship, or maybe you got a job or a financial blessing or something like that, and you maybe just didn't handle it that great? That's kind of what we see here. Do you guys remember the stimulus packages back in the, COVID era, where all of a sudden we just got money in our bank and we were like, what the heck? And some people went out and bought 2 dirt bikes. I don't know. And I don't know what you did with yours. I'd like to hear your story, but yeah. But maybe I didn't handle that blessing so well. I probably should have got meat, or like a freezer or some toilet paper, but dirt bikes it was just so fun. Anyways, maybe you've been blessed in different ways. Maybe you haven't handled that blessing very well. That's what we see right off the bat here. Verses 1-4 talks about Jacob favoring Joseph. He really did. Like, he favored him over all of his other sons. And kind of gets sideways right off the bat in verse 3. And so I want to tell you about Joseph's family of origin, like the background. So we all have our parents, but then we have the broader of our family, our kind of family of origin. Listen to this. Jacob, Joseph's dad, tried to trick his father, Isaac, into giving him the family fortune instead of his older twin brother. Okay, so that happened. And then Jacob, because that didn't go over well, ended up running from his brother for more than 200 miles on foot. I'm pretty sure that's an ultra marathon. I think an ultra marathon is like 100. Anyways, this guy ran very far on foot, and he found himself a place with some of his mom's relatives. And then his uncle kind of cheated him out of some stuff and treated him like a slave, which is not a good thing. And then Jacob ends up marrying 2 of his cousins. That's a little weird. And then he had 2 mistresses also. And between all of them, he had 12 sons, and 1 daughter. Hence, all the rivalry, all of the competition, and all of the complete craziness. And you thought your family was a little dysfunctional, right? Just because your family isn't perfect, because I can just tell you, I don't even need to know your family of origin situation or your family right now. I don't even need to know. I can promise you your family's not perfect. Maybe things that happened in your childhood, in the past, how you grew up, or maybe it's what you're experiencing right now, or maybe you're about to walk into a season that's difficult. Just because your family is imperfect, it doesn't mean that God can't work in and through your life. God works through all kinds of circumstances. God works through all kinds of people, even dysfunctional families. Back in verse 2, Joseph ratted his brothers out and told his dad, hey, they're not working very hard. They were shepherding out on the hillside, and he kind of ratted his brothers out. So they didn't like him. They hated him. Then, to make things worse, what we saw is that Jacob gave Joseph this robe of many colors. It's kind of the famous thing in this story, this robe of many colors. And I want to tell you what this signified. This wasn't just your average, ordinary, colorful coat or whatever. This meant something. So it meant a couple things. Number one, it was a position of favor. Number two, it was princely standing, like royalty. And number three, it signified that he was going to receive the birthright. And so this was a dramatic way for Jacob, the father here, to say that he was going to give the birthright to Joseph. This was a dramatic way to do it. And by the way, the birthright was supposed to go to the oldest son. And here's Jacob. He's 17, not the oldest son, and he's going to receive this position and this possession. And so let me tell you a little bit about, if you dig into this phrase, the robe of many colors, and you look at it in the Hebrew, it gives us some specific details. And so, first of all, I want you to know that this was a long robe. So it went all the way to the end of the wrists and all the way down to the floor. Okay, this is this big, long robe. Why is that significant? Because in that time, people that had short robes, short sleeve, whatever, they were working people. But if you had a big, long robe, that in and of itself said, you're an overseer. Okay? This is what princes wore, these kinds of things. Overseers wore these kinds of things. And so, in Hebrew, robe of many colors meant, and I'll tell you, it's ketonet passim. That's a great Hebrew word there. But what that means, the first part of that means cloak, and the second part of that word means what it was made out of. So it could have been fine wool, silk garment. It could have been several different things, but high quality. Okay, this is like high thread count kind of stuff. And sometimes they were colorful, sometimes they were embroidered, and sometimes they were like striped, but it's not specific. So I hate to say this, but it's very possible that the coat of many colors, the robe of many colors, maybe it wasn't colorful at all. So you may have already known that, but it just really broke my heart this week to find that out. But the main point here is that Jacob had some poor judgment as a father to give one of his younger sons this coat. This was not wise. And this statement was that, hey, all you older brothers, you're going to have to listen to him. He's going to be the overseer. And so here's Joseph, 17 years old, and he's overseeing 10 of his brothers. So there was 12 brothers total. Benjamin was younger, and so 10 of his older brothers, he's in charge of them. Verses 5 through 8, Joseph has this dream. He has his first dream. And it really shows that he's 17 here. It's kind of immature because really, it's kind of a lack of tact that he even shared this dream. And it's true, God gave him an inside view into his future. Wouldn't that be awesome? I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't like that, but wouldn't it? I mean, basically, he got an inside view of the rest of his life in some ways. And maybe he was meant to keep that for himself, though. See, in a relationship with God, there's some things that God shares to you that are for you. And there's times when God speaks to you and it's to share. And I think that's a maturity thing. And it seems as if this 17-year-old didn't know that this is probably something I should keep to myself. True. And in fact, then this dream of these bundles of wheat bowing down to Joseph, this one bundle of wheat, it's going to happen. And so if you read ahead to chapter 42, they do bow down to him. And you'll see that maybe in a week or two. Verses 9 through 11 is Joseph's second dream. And as if the first dream wasn't offensive enough and a slap in the face enough, this second dream takes it even further. And it shows that the sun and the moon represented mom and dad, And then the 11 stars represented the 11 brothers. All bow down to Joseph. And so now his father is perturbed with him. He's like, are you sure about your dreams here? Are you sure these dreams are coming from God? Are you trying to say that we're all going to bow down to you? At first it didn't bother him with the first dream, but then you notice he's kind of like, wait a minute, are you sure about this? Let's keep reading in verse 12 here, and this is a kind of a bigger section, so follow along with me, and then we'll talk about it. So verse 12, it says this: Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, Here I am. So he said to him, Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him to the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And he found a man wandering in the field, and he asked him, What are you seeking? He said, I'm seeking my brothers. He said, Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock? And the man said, They have gone away, for I heard them say, Let's go to Dothan. And just so you know, this is about a 15-minute walk. Okay, so they're a little bit further away. And so he goes and he finds them, and it says, verse 17, and the man said, They have gone away, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan, and saw him. They saw him from afar. And before he came near to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, Here comes the dreamer. Come now, let us kill him, throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him. We will see what will become of his dreams. But when Reuben, one of the brothers, heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, Let's not take his life. And Reuben said to them, Shed no blood. Throw him into the pit here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father. So he had this plan to try to save him. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into this pit. The pit was empty, and there was no water in it. Verse 25, we're almost there. Then they sat down to eat. And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, and on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and then let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother. He's our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him. The Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up, and they lifted him out of the pit, and they sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. And he returned to his brothers and said, The boy is gone, and I, where shall I go? They took Joseph's robe, and they slaughtered a goat, and they dipped the robe in the blood. When they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, This we have found. Please identify whether this is your son's robe or not. And he identified it, and he said, It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without a doubt torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned his son for days. That was a pretty normal way to mourn at that time. Verse 35 says, All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, No, I shall go down to Sheol myself, or to my son. Mourning. That Sheol, it represents death. Like he's like, I want to die too, basically. Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. into the pit. Let's talk about this for a little bit. So in verses 12 through 17, we see Jacob sends Joseph to check on his brothers. So he is, in fact, he's wearing the robe. He is acting as overseer over his brothers. He's going to check on them. He's going to check on him. Verses 18 through 20, we see that they're conspiring to kill Joseph. They want to kill him. They're making a plan to kill him. And the brothers were mocking him. He's the dreamer, making fun of him. And they were like, how can we kill him? They didn't believe his dreams were really from God. That's important to understand. They did not buy it. They did not believe it. So they made a plan to throw him into the pit and then tell Jacob, his father, that he'd been killed by wild animals, which really they didn't even have to tell him. They just showed him the coat, and you saw he kind of made that assumption. Verse 21 and 22, Reuben, one of the brothers, had a plan to rescue Joseph. And he was trying to kind of save him. So he talked to brothers. He's like, let's just throw him in the pit, and then we'll kill him later. Just trying to stall, I think, is really what he was trying to do. And he, instead of really trying to stop him, maybe fight with him, he just tried to outsmart him a little bit. And he had this alternate plan. Really, he was trying to save him from being killed. This is pretty cool coming from Reuben, because Reuben, if you look back in Genesis 35, a couple chapters before this, Reuben had sex with one of his father's mistresses. And so that's what he's known for. Like, if you heard the name Reuben, you're like, oh, that dude, yeah. But now, because Reuben stuck his neck out and kind of fought against his brothers, maybe outsmarted them a little bit, we're going to remember Reuben because he really saved his brother's life. He won't be defined by his mistake. Isn't that good? Verse 23 through 25, Joseph is cast into this pit. They stripped him of this dang robe that they're sick and tired of looking at. They're sick and tired of hearing about the robe. They stripped it off of him, and then they ate lunch. For real. Like, they threw him in there, and they're like, let's eat some tacos and talk about how we're going to kill him. These guys are ruthless, right? Like, these guys are so mad. And can I just tell you that anger is one letter short of danger, right? When you get angry, it gets crazy, right? Where there is anger, there is always pain underneath it. Think about that for yourself. When you are angry, many times it's because you're hurt. These guys, these brothers were hurt. They were betrayed by their own father, right? He pushed them aside, elevated the wrong brother. You guys ever heard of a dad wound? This is it. This is the epitome of a dad wound. These guys were actually really hurt, and it angered them to the point that they were ruthless. Verse 25 through 27, there's a plan to kill Joseph. And guys, what we see is that this is, or to sell Joseph, sorry. This is a crime of opportunity. These people happen to be coming by. These Ishmaelites, and these are Arab traders that had all kinds of stuff that they were selling, including people, slaves. And so they make this plan, hey, let's just sell them to them. We can make a little money. And so in verse 28, we see that Joseph was sold into slavery. And listen to this. He was sold for 20 shekels. I looked that up. Guess how much that is in our amount of money? $250. They sold their brother for $250. And they felt pretty good about it because they didn't kill him. So they made a little money. They didn't technically kill him. And then the biggest thing, guys, is that they defeated, they thought, God's revelation to him. They're like, if he's not here and whatever, like, obviously it's not true. All these dreams that he had, we're going to bow down to him? Yeah, right. How are you going to do that when you're a slave? So they thought they defeated God's dream that came to Joseph, God's revelation. Verse 29 and 32, this part literally breaks my heart. They lied to their father. This is not some little lie like, I broke a plate. So before we see them lie to him, we see Reuben go back to this pit where his brother was and just rip his clothes and just cry. And he was upset. You know why? Because he thought, I'm never going to see my brother again. I'm never going to see my brother again. He realized what they just did. They may not have killed him, but he's never going to see his brother again. Then the brothers, they took the robe, tore it up a little bit, put some goat's blood on it, and then they took it to the dad. And this is just a heartless lie. Can you imagine? Not one of the brothers said a word. They just sat there and watched their dad just be in total pain. Can you imagine? This is his favorite son. This is one of his sons. Then in 33 through 35, we just see Joseph's grief, and then he tore his clothes. He grieved. And the brothers sat there and watched him. It's evil. And then to end it in verse 36, it says that Joseph ended up in the court of a high Egyptian official. We're talking about his rank, not his cannabis level. This is Potiphar, the officer. Nobody even got that in this service. Last service, they thought that was great. Either slow or I don't know. It's not as funny in this service. But the officer of Pharaoh, and he was a captain of the guard, okay? And so here he is in chains. In chains. He didn't get killed, but he's going to be a slave. Two big thoughts that I have after studying this with you guys this morning. Number one is that obedience doesn't guarantee success. I mean, really, it doesn't, just because you do what you're supposed to do doesn't always mean everything's going to turn out perfect. I'm sure you've experienced that. I know I have. Joseph did what his father told him to do. Joseph really did receive these dreams from God and just shared them with his brothers. Seems pretty innocent. You know, God cares way more about shaping your character than your comfort. And God allowed Joseph's plans to be wrecked so Joseph could find God's plans. And sometimes our plans have to be wrecked for us to find God's perfect plans for our lives. That's messy, isn't it? Second big thought that I have after studying this is that we can't always see what God is doing. We can't always see it. Joseph did not know what the future held. All he knew is that he was in chains and he was on his way to Egypt. And he was like, what in the heck? My whole family just betrayed me. I'm in chains. I'm on my way to Egypt to be a slave. Many times when things get hard, I know for me, sometimes it's just easy to want to give up when things get really hard. But Joseph's setback was really a setup for what God was about to do in and through his life. Maybe you're here this morning and you're experiencing some setbacks, or you have in your past, or you know somebody that's experiencing some setbacks. What's amazing is that God can use all of it for good. And he can use the difficult things that we're walking through to prepare us for what's next. Have you ever been in a situation, maybe recently for you, where you're just kind of scratching your head and going, what in the world? God, I'm trying to do what you want me to do. I'm trying to live a life for you. Why? Like, I don't understand. God, I'm trying to obey you. Why is everything not working out? Can we go back to the beginning for just a second and read the verse that we read at the very beginning? Romans 8:28. Read it out loud with me. Let's see if we can do this. Romans 8:28, it says this, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. I want to draw your attention to two words. All things. All things. That means the things that you don't like. That means the things that you would have never chosen. That means the things that hurt so deeply. God can use all things, good and bad, to shape us and to even prepare us for what's next. Whatever's going on in your life, whatever's heavy on your heart this morning that you walked in with, maybe some baggage from the past or something that you're walking through right now, I just want you to know that God can handle it. He can comfort you. He is like, come here. Let me hold you. He just wants to comfort us. He just wants to give us peace, help us heal, and then say, hey, let me show you where to go. He just wants to show us where to go and what to do with our lives. God is a loving Father. This week yesterday, my car broke down. Okay, I have a Jeep and it's been an awesome car, but it broke down. And come to find out, my clutch went out, which is just stinks. Anyways, so I'm sitting at home and I'm a little stressed, and I'm telling my wife, I got to get my car at least, it's a mile away from my house, of course, and it's not in a good place. I need to get it to my house so I can figure out what to do. And so I'm trying to figure all this out on my own. And finally, Megan's like, call somebody. And I'm like, okay, who? So I called a few friends from church, and before you knew it, I had help, and we got my Jeep where it needed to go. I've got kind of a plan this week. Someone even let me borrow a car to get to church today, and they said I can borrow it till my car's fixed. And you're like, okay, what does that have to do with anything in this world, Kevin? In much the same way, sometimes we find ourselves in life broken, and God is just waiting for us to go, help. Will you please help? And just admit to him, like, I can't figure it out. I need your help. That's exactly where God wants us. Just to be honest with him. Just say, God, I need your help. God is waiting for us just to surrender to him so he can do that. So he can say, hey, come here. Let me comfort you right now. God can give us peace in the middle of the storm. God knows what you need more than you do. You're his child. He loves you. He has a plan for your life. God is waiting for you to say, I can't do it. I give up. I surrender. And that's when he can move in and really love us and really pour his grace out on us. Will you bow with me this morning in prayer? God, help us just to be honest with you this morning and just let go. We're trying to control. God, help us just to be honest with you and say, I can't do it. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to heal. God, help. God, I know that you are ready and willing to scoop us up, hold us, comfort us, give us peace that we can't get otherwise, and then give us our next steps, because you got a plan, you got a purpose for our lives. So God, we come to you this morning. We want to worship you. We want to talk to you. We want to surrender to you. We just give you these next few moments, Jesus. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If you guys would stand, me and Justin will be down front. If you need prayer today, come down and pray with us, or just sing out to God.